What if Jesus met Laura Loomer? The hour's midnight. The protest has long since scattered, leaving only echoes of outrage and discarded signs on the cold, concrete steps of a social media giant. Here, in the sterile blue glow of a corporate logo, stands a lone figure. She is wired, fueled by the adrenaline of a battle she believes she is winning, even in exile. This is her modern Areopagus, a public square of digital gods from which she has been cast out. The air is thick, with a chilling silence, a stark contrast to the storm of contention she carries within her. She is a warrior standing on the battlefield after the armies have gone home, surveying a kingdom of digital silence. This is the digital martyr, a self-appointed prophet for a tribe wandering in a wilderness of algorithms and shadow bands. Her power isn't drawn from an office or a title, but from her sheer capacity to command attention through conflict. She has built an entire identity around a single, defiant thought, worn as both a crown of thorns and a badge of honor, that she is the most banned, most censored woman in the world. This persecution is not a burden to her. It is her very source of validation. It is the proof that her crusade is righteous, the fuel for her holy war. Without a giant to slay, she fears she is nothing at all. And then he is there, not with a thunderclap or a flash of celestial light, but with a stillness so profound it deafens the lingering noise of rage in her mind. Jesus arrives without a sound, yet his presence fills the empty space with an authority that dwarfs the monolithic building behind her. He doesn't offer an argument or a counter-protest. He simply is. The cold, impersonal light of the corporate logo seems to dim, overshadowed by a gentle, discerning light that emanates from him. This light doesn't seek to expose the sins of the corporation she despises, but to illuminate the deep, hidden cracks in the armor she so carefully constructed. Her first instinct is a twitch in her hand, a phantom urge to grab her phone, to go live, to frame this moment for her audience and expose the silent man before her. But the impulse dies. His gaze is not one of judgment, but of a piercing knowledge that bypasses the warrior and sees the woman. It sees the exhaustion beneath the adrenaline, the hollowness behind the righteous fury, the arguments she rehearses in her mind, the lies she's fought, the enemies she's faced, all crumble, rendered meaningless by a peace that defies understanding. If this encounter already makes you think, then subscribe to this channel now, because here, the power of heaven confronts the thrones of earth. In her mind, a fortress of conviction stands unshakable, built brick by brick, with every online battle and public confrontation. At its very foundation is a core belief, a mantra that doubles as a war cry. She is the most banned, most censored woman in the world. To her, this is not a statement of victimhood, but a declaration of honor, a testament to her effectiveness. It is the evidence that her truth is so potent, so dangerous to the powers that be, that they must silence her. This persecution is her currency, the validation that she is on the right side of history, a modern Joan of Arc facing the digital pyre. He stands before her, a silent witness to this self-made martyrdom. Her crusade is fueled by a second, more dangerous conviction, a willingness to do whatever it takes to expose the truth. This philosophy justifies the scorched earth tactics, the ambushes with a camera, the public call-outs that leave reputations in ruins. It is a righteous end that sanctifies any means. But the man before her embodies a different path. He too came to bear witness to the truth, yet his method was not a battering ram, but a basin of water and a towel. His power was not in exposing the guilt of others, but in washing the feet of the very ones who would betray him. His presence silently asks a devastating question. What good is a truth that costs you your love? The air crackles with this unspoken clash of kingdoms. Her kingdom is built on noise, on the amplification of outrage, on the adrenaline of the fight. His kingdom, he once said, is not of this world. It is a kingdom whose king enters a city not on a war horse but on a donkey. It is a kingdom where strength is found in gentleness and honor is found in humility. She sees her anger as a righteous fire, a holy instrument against evil. But in the quiet reflection of his eyes, that fire looks less like the pillar that guided Israel, and more like the strange fire offered by Nadab and Abihu, an offering born of the human spirit, not the divine. She wields a truth that serves as a weapon. It is sharp, precise, and designed to dismantle her enemies piece by piece. She collects facts, exposes hypocrisy, and lays out evidence like a prosecutor in a trial for the soul of the nation. But the truth he represents is not a weapon to be wielded, but a reality to be entered into. It is a truth that doesn't just expose lies, but liberates the liar. It promises that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And as she stands there, shackled to her own crusade, a terrifying thought surfaces. Her truth has not freed her. It has simply given her a more righteous-looking prison. If you're wrestling with this, comment below. What does it mean to be truly free in a world full of battles? The chasm between them is profound. Her entire identity is forged in opposition. She needs an enemy, the corrupt media, the tech oligarchs, the silent majority, to know who she is. Without a giant to rage against, she is just a woman with a phone, lost in the silence. But Jesus offers an identity not found in what one fights against, but in who one is loved by. His value was not determined by Herod's opinion or Pilate's verdict. It was sealed before the foundation of the world. In his silent gaze, the digital martyr feels the ground of her own convictions begin to tremble, shaken by a peace that feels more powerful than any war she has ever waged. The silence deepens, becoming an active force, a spiritual pressure that presses in on her from all sides. Her mind, a finely tuned engine of argument and outrage, sputters and stalls. She scrambles for a foothold, a familiar script to rationalize the moment. She is a warrior. She is a truth-teller. She is persecuted for righteousness' sake. These are the pillars of her identity, the lines she has repeated to herself and to millions. Yet, in the face of this profound stillness, the words are just noise. The man before her does not argue or accuse, yet his very being dismantles her defenses. The silent judgment has begun, and the courtroom is her own soul, where all her justifications are suddenly rendered inadmissible. Her primary claim to honor, the very source of her power, is her prophetic ability to see and expose the hidden evils of the world. She has knowledge. She has insight. She has the courage to speak what others only whisper. But as this conviction rises to her defense, a different truth echoes in the space between them, a spiritual law that hangs in the air like dust in a sunbeam. It whispers that even if one has the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if they have not love, they are nothing. The revelation is devastating. Her truth, wielded without love, is not a liberating sword, but a clanging cymbal, adding to the chaos she claims to fight. The tension is no longer just emotional, it is cosmic. Two kingdoms are occupying the same space. Her kingdom is built on the shifting sands of public opinion, digital engagement, and the constant, frantic need to expose an enemy. Its power is measured in clicks, shares, and the outrage it generates. His kingdom, however, operates on an inverted logic. It is a reality where the first are last, where strength is perfected in weakness, and where a king's throne was a cross. Before this upside-down authority, her worldly strategies are not just ineffective. They are revealed as a form of spiritual bondage, a desperate game she can never truly win. She has always seen her anger as a tool, a sacred flame to purge the wicked and awaken the complacent. It is the fuel for her crusade, the righteous energy that justifies her methods. But in the clear, still atmosphere of his presence, that fire feels different. It feels unholy. Another ancient law permeates the cold night air, a truth that cuts deeper than any corporate censorship. It declares that anyone who is angry with their brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Suddenly her rage is not a weapon in her hand, but a weight on her soul. The very thing she believed was her strength is now the primary evidence against her in this silent, spiritual trial. The judgment is complete, though no verdict has been spoken. She feels it in her bones, the unnerving sensation of being seen truly and completely for the first time. The digital martyr, the self-appointed prophet, the warrior for truth. All these personas have been stripped away like old, worn-out coats. She stands exposed, not to a crowd or a camera, but to a standard of perfect love and perfect truth. The silence that remains is not empty, but heavy, with the weight of a verdict rendered not by a voice from the heavens, but by the quiet, undeniable truth that has taken root in the deepest part of her spirit. His presence becomes a spiritual mirror, reflecting not what she says she is, but what her soul has become. In this silent, unwavering gaze, she sees the image she has so carefully curated for the world. The fearless warrior, the relentless truth-teller, the digital martyr. But the reflection is distorted, warped by an undercurrent of bitterness she had long mistaken for passion. The mirror doesn't show a hero. It shows a figure hunched over, exhausted from the weight of her own crusade, her armor fused to her skin, unable to distinguish the fighter from the fight. He offers no accusation, only a perfect, loving clarity that is more damning than any verdict. Her carefully constructed identity begins to fracture under the light of this terrible, gentle truth. She recoils internally, her mind racing to justify her path. This is a war, she tells herself. The world doesn't reward gentleness. It preys on it. Her enemies don't play by rules of love and forgiveness, so why should she? To be soft is to be destroyed. Her methods, the ambushes, the public call-outs, the scorched earth pursuit of her targets, are not a choice but a necessity, a painful requirement for anyone serious about winning. She is not a monster. She is a product of the battlefield she was thrown into. This is what leadership looks like in a fallen world. It is a necessary hardness, a righteous fire needed to burn away the rot. Her conviction is a shield, but it feels strangely thin now. The spiritual mirror shows her the core of her pride, her knowledge, her receipts, her ability to expose the hidden things. She has built a fortress out of facts and evidence. But a divine law echoes in the silence, a truth that dismantles her entire arsenal. It whispers that even if one has the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, if they have not love, they are nothing. Suddenly, her crusade is rendered weightless, meaningless. The truth she wielded like a sword is revealed to be a clanging cymbal, just more noise in a world already deafened by rage. Her greatest strength in the economy of heaven is a liability. The mirror then shifts, focusing on the fire she calls righteous anger. She has always seen it as a holy instrument, the energy that fuels her mission. But in the reflection, she sees it for what it is, a poison. Another ancient standard is raised, declaring that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. She sees flashes of past confrontations, the sneer on her face, the thrill of the verbal kill, the satisfaction in another's humiliation. This was not the fire of God purifying the temple. This was the strange fire of a human heart, an offering born of ego and bitterness. The rage that she believed was her weapon is now revealed to be her chains. The image in the mirror is now unbearable. The digital martyr, the brave truth-teller, has been replaced by the reflection of a soul trapped in a prison of its own making, mistaking the bars for a badge of honor. The justifications crumble. The righteous anger feels like a sickness. For the first time in a long time, the warrior is silent, and the woman inside is terrified by what she sees. The silence of Jesus has forced her to listen to the deafening noise of her own heart. And you? Would you have the courage to look inside if you were standing before Jesus? Comment below. The invisible pressure intensifies, reaching a breaking point. The silence is no longer a void, but a crucible, burning away her defenses until only the raw, unvarnished truth remains. She feels the full weight of her crusade, the years of relentless conflict, the endless cycle of outrage and retaliation. For the first time, it doesn't feel like a noble burden. It feels like a millstone. A quiet, devastating question hangs in the air, posed not by a voice but by his very being. Who are you doing this for? She clings to her mantra. I am the most banned, most censored woman in the world. But the words, once a source of strength, now echo with a terrifying hollowness. The armor of the digital martyr is beginning to crack. Her entire mission has been built on the idea of righteous persecution. She sees herself in the ancient promise, "Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you and say all kinds of evil against you falsely." But his presence adds a single crushing condition to that promise. "For my sake." A slideshow of her greatest hits flashes through her mind. The ambushes, the viral takedowns, the gleeful exposures. Was it for his name, or was it for her own? Was the goal to bring people to God's truth, or to her brand of it? The distinction, which she had never considered, now feels like the chasm between heaven and hell. She fights the thought, insisting her cause is just, but the seed of doubt has been planted in the deepest soil of her heart. He doesn't need to speak. The divine standard is simply present, an undeniable reality against which her life is measured. She has championed truth, but what is the fruit of her labor? The spiritual law is clear. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. The work of her hands, however, has produced division, rage, fear, and a bitter, unrelenting strife. She sees the faces of those she has targeted, not as ideological enemies, but as human beings she publicly dismantled for clicks and validation. She had called this fire righteous, a necessary tool for a fallen world. But now, in the light of perfect love, it looks like the strange fire of a soul that has forgotten its source. The climax is a silent internal shattering. The carefully constructed identity of the fearless warrior dissolves, revealing the terrified woman beneath. The hypocrisy is laid bare, not by an accuser, but by her own conscience, awakened by this holy presence. She, who claimed to fight for freedom, is a prisoner of her own anger. She, who claimed to expose lies, had been living one, the lie that her bitterness was passion, that her cruelty was courage, and that her fame was favor. The distance between the persona she projected and the person she had become is a vast, desolate wasteland. The fight is over. She has seen herself, and she is undone. The warrior's mask falls completely. All that remains is a profound, soul-crushing vulnerability. The adrenaline is gone, replaced by an exhaustion so deep it feels ancient. The anger that fueled her has been extinguished, leaving behind the cold, gray ash of regret. She stands on the steps of the silent corporate giant, but the giant is no longer the enemy. The enemy was inside her all along, a tyrant disguised as a savior. In this moment of terrible clarity, she is no longer a martyr or a prophet. She is simply a soul, stripped bare, standing before its maker. And you? Would you have the courage to look inside if you were standing before Jesus? Comment below. The encounter does not end with a flash of light or a disappearing act. He remains, a silent anchor in the swirling chaos of her soul. The consequences of this meeting begin to crystallize, not as an external judgment, but as an internal reckoning. Her first instinct is to rebuild the fortress. She internally screams that the world is a war zone, that softness is suicide, and that her methods are not a choice, but a grim necessity, forged in the fires of a culture war. She believes this. She has to believe this. To admit otherwise is to confess that her entire life's crusade has been a monumental, soul-destroying mistake. Her ideological armor, though shattered, is a comfort she desperately tries to piece back together. But the light of his presence holds up a spiritual mirror, and the reflection is damning. She, the champion of truth, who has built an empire on exposing secrets, is now confronted by a truth that liberates. A divine principle fills the space between them, whispering that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And in that moment, she feels the crushing weight of her own bondage. The truth she has wielded has not freed her. It has yoked her to an endless cycle of outrage, bitterness, and conflict. The very weapon she used to attack others is revealed to be the bars of her own prison, a cage she proudly decorated and called a kingdom. Her mind scrambles, seeking justification in her righteous anger. She recalls every enemy, every slight, every betrayal that fueled her sacred fire. But the mirror shifts, reflecting a different, more terrifying standard. The air grows still as an ancient law asserts itself, a law that declares that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister is subject to judgment. Suddenly, her rage is not a holy instrument, but a poison she has been drinking, hoping her enemies would die. The thrill of the public takedown, the satisfaction of the viral humiliation. It all looks different now. It looks less like the work of a prophet, and more like the work of the accuser she claimed to be fighting. The most painful consequence is the re-examination of her own martyrdom. She has wrapped herself in the promise that the persecuted are blessed, wearing her censorship as a badge of honor. But his silent presence forces a devastating addendum to that promise. Blessed are you when they persecute you for my sake. Was it for his sake, or was it for the name Loomer? Was the goal to glorify God, or to build a brand on being the world's most effective victim? The hypocrisy is suffocating. She, who called out the grifters and the self-serving, is forced to see the beam in her own eye, a log of pride she had mistaken for a cross. The fight is over. The internal arguments cease. All that remains is the cold, stark reality of what she has become in the pursuit of what she believed was right. The consequences are not a punishment from heaven, but the natural harvest of the seeds she has sown. A soul starved of love, a spirit addicted to conflict, and an identity built on a foundation of sand. She stands before perfect love, having waged a war in its name, only to realize she never understood the commander. And you? Would you have the courage to look inside if you were standing before Jesus? Comment below. The encounter does not end, it merely deepens. He remains, a silent, unwavering presence that holds the broken pieces of her identity in a beam of pure light. Her first instinct, a primal impulse born of years of combat, is to rebuild the fortress. Internally, she screams her justifications. The world is a war zone. Softness is suicide, and her methods are not a choice, but a grim necessity forged in the fires of a culture war. She has to believe this. To admit otherwise is to confess that her entire life's crusade has been a monumental, soul-destroying mistake. The ideological armor, though shattered, is a comfort she desperately tries to piece back together, shard by painful shard. But the light of his presence holds up a spiritual mirror, and the reflection is damning. She, the champion of truth, who has built an empire on exposing secrets, is now confronted by a truth that liberates. A divine principle fills the space between them, whispering that you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And in that moment, she feels the crushing weight of her own bondage. The truth she has wielded has not freed her. It has yoked her to an endless cycle of outrage, bitterness, and conflict. The very weapon she used to attack others is revealed to be the bars of her own prison, a cage she proudly decorated and called a kingdom. The most painful reflection is that of her own martyrdom. She has wrapped herself in the promise that the persecuted are blessed, wearing her censorship as a badge of honor. But his silent presence forces a devastating addendum to that promise. Blessed are you when they persecute you for my sake. Was it for his sake? Or was it for the name Loomer? Was the goal to glorify God, or to build a brand on being the world's most effective victim? The hypocrisy is suffocating. She, who called out the grifters and the self-serving, is forced to see the beam in her own eye, a log of pride she had mistaken for a cross. The final wall crumbles. There is no more fight, no more justification, no more performance. The digital martyr is gone, dissolved into the cold night air. All that remains is a woman, stripped bare of her self-made righteousness, standing in the ruins of an identity she now understands was built on sand. The silence is no longer an external force but an internal reality. The profound, hollow quiet of a soul that has finally stopped shouting long enough to hear its own emptiness. And you? Would you have the courage to look inside if you were standing before Jesus? Comment below. The encounter dissolves as quietly as it began. He is gone, but the echo of his stillness remains. She is left alone on the cold, concrete steps, but the silence is different now. It is no longer the absence of noise, but the presence of a terrifying, liberating truth. The world saw nothing. But a foundation has been shaken to its core. While the world builds kingdoms on noise, true power is found in the silence where we finally meet ourselves. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next confrontation between heaven and earth.